Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. In September 2025, President Trump stood at the podium and declared, "We don't need their lumber," making headlines across the country and sending a clear message to America's northern neighbor. The administration was targeting Canada with a new round of tariffs, escalating tensions in an already fraught trade relationship. A sweeping 10% tariff was slapped on all imported timber, affecting a massive volume of cross-border trade. Meanwhile, finished wood goods, everything from kitchen cabinets and vanities to furniture, were hit even harder with a steep 25% tariff. These tariffs, effective October 14th, marked the latest escalation in a long-running and often bitter trade dispute between the US and Canada. And the pressure isn't letting up. More tariff increases are already scheduled for January unless negotiators can hammer out a new agreement. For Canadian producers, this new 10% tariff comes on top of existing duties, making their lumber even more expensive for American buyers and squeezing their profit margins. The US government claims Canadian softwood is unfairly subsidized, arguing that it gives Canadian companies an unfair advantage in the American market. But the real impact of these tariffs is felt by American builders, contractors, and families hoping to buy or renovate homes. The reality is, the US simply doesn't produce enough softwood lumber to meet its own demand. For decades, Canadian imports have filled the gap, keeping construction costs in check. By making lumber more expensive, the administration is directly straining the American housing market, slowing down construction and putting homeownership further out of reach for many. The soundbite of self-sufficiency clashes with the economic reality. The US housing industry is deeply reliant on Canadian wood, and there's no quick fix for that dependency. These tariffs risk destabilizing a market already under immense pressure, threatening jobs, raising prices, and making the dream of homeownership even harder to achieve for countless Americans. A tariff is a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. Governments use tariffs as a tool to regulate trade, influence the flow of goods, and sometimes to protect local industries from foreign competition. For example, when the US imposes a tariff on Canadian lumber, it means American companies must pay extra fees to import that wood. These charges are added on top of the regular price, making the imported lumber more expensive than before. This extra cost doesn't just stop with the importer. It gets passed down the entire supply chain, from the company that brings in the lumber, to the builders who use it, and finally to the homebuyers who purchase new houses or renovations. The main idea behind tariffs is to make foreign goods pricier, so that shoppers are more likely to choose products made in their own country. In theory, this helps domestic businesses compete and can even encourage job growth at home. But the reality is more complicated. The US already had over 35% in duties on Canadian lumber. A new 10% tariff pushes costs even higher, making it harder for builders and buyers alike. On a $10,000 shipment, tariffs can now add $4,500 or more before the wood even reaches a job site. That's a significant increase, especially for large projects or small businesses trying to keep costs down. These aren't fees paid by Canada or foreign companies. They're absorbed by the American supply chain, and ultimately, by everyday consumers who see higher prices at the store or in their bills. Tariffs on cabinets, vanities, and other home goods mean that even simple home renovations or repairs can become much more expensive than expected. Every new tariff acts like a hidden tax on American families and businesses, quietly raising the cost of living and doing business. While tariffs are aimed at foreign nations, the financial burden almost always lands at home, affecting millions of Americans in ways they may not even realize. The result? Higher prices for homes, renovations, and everyday goods, costs that ripple through the entire economy. The debate continues. Do tariffs really protect American jobs and industries, or do they simply make life more expensive for everyone? Economists, politicians, and business owners all have different answers. For now, one thing is certain: Americans are paying more out of pocket, whether they're building a home, renovating a kitchen, or just shopping for everyday items. The benefits of tariffs remain hotly contested, but the impact on prices is something everyone can feel. Homeownership has long been at the heart of the American dream, symbolizing stability, success, and a place to call your own. For For generations, families have aspired to own a home, seeing it as a foundation for building wealth and creating lasting memories. But today, that dream is slipping further out of reach for millions, as rising lumber tariffs and material costs drive prices higher than ever before. The cost of building a new home is no longer just about location or size. It's about the soaring price of the materials themselves. The National Association of Home Builders warns these tariffs act as a direct tax on buyers, making it even harder for first-time homeowners to break into the market. Lumber frames every new house. When its price jumps, so does the cost of building. Every wall, floor, and roof depends on these materials, and even a small increase can add thousands to the final price tag. Even before the latest tariffs, home prices were climbing at a record pace. Now the average buyer needs 6 years or more to save for a down payment, and that number is only rising as wages struggle to keep up. Previous tariff hikes have already added tens of thousands to the price of a typical new home, putting ownership out of reach for many hard-working families. With construction costs up over 30% since 2021, new duties on lumber and cabinets will only accelerate the trend, making it even more difficult for builders to offer affordable options. Families who were once pre-approved for mortgages may suddenly find themselves priced out overnight, forced to put their dreams on hold or look for less desirable options. The impact ripples out. Fewer people can move, upgrade, or downsize, and the entire housing market slows as a result. Existing home prices inflate as new builds slow, making it harder for everyone to find a place that fits their needs and budget. The dream of a backyard for the kids, a home office for remote work, or a peaceful place to retire is slipping away for many Americans, replaced by uncertainty and frustration. Tariffs on wood are, in effect, a tax on the future Americans are working for. A future where homeownership is not just a dream, but a reality for all. Let's follow a builder, Sarah, constructing a modest 3-bedroom home. Framing is the first step, and it's almost entirely softwood lumber, 30% of which comes from Canada. Before tariffs, Sarah's lumber cost $40,000. Now with duties over 40%, it's $56,000. Even domestic suppliers raise prices, facing less competition. That's $16,000 extra before the house is even finished. Next, kitchen cabinets and vanities. A $10,000 set now costs $12,500 with new tariffs. In total, nearly $20,000 in extra costs are baked into this one home. Builders like Sarah can't absorb these increases, they pass them to buyers. A house that would have sold for $400,000 is now $420,000. For buyers, that means a bigger down payment, higher mortgage, or losing out entirely. Tariffs have made the journey from blueprint to reality far more expensive. The result, fewer homes built, higher prices, and more Americans locked out of ownership. The cost is real, and it's growing. Lumber tariffs don't just hit new home buyers, they ripple through the entire housing market. Higher construction costs mean fewer new homes and apartments, tightening supply and driving up rents. Renters see monthly payments rise, making it harder to save for a future home. Homeowners, hoping to renovate, face sticker shock. A new deck, finished basement, or kitchen remodel now costs much more. Many delay or cancel projects, hurting local contractors and small businesses. The tariffs, meant to protect one industry, end up squeezing families and small businesses across the country. The affordability crisis deepens for both renters and owners. The impact is broad, touching nearly every American household. Builders and business leaders are sounding the alarm. These tariffs are hurting, not helping. The National Association of Home Builders calls them a tax on consumers, warning they worsen the housing crisis. The U.S. doesn't produce enough lumber to meet demand. Canadian imports are essential. The Chamber of Commerce argues that tariffs on lumber and furniture don't protect national security, they just raise costs and slow the economy. Industry leaders see real consequences: delayed projects, families priced out, and small businesses struggling. They urge the administration to exempt essential building materials from trade wars. The message is clear. Tariffs are bottlenecking the market, raising prices, and hurting the very people they claim to protect. The housing shortage grows, and affordability slips further away. The call for change is growing louder. Canada isn't standing by. The government has pledged $1.2 billion Canadian to support its lumber industry and workers. This aid aims to prevent mill closures and job losses, but Canada's real goal is negotiation, not escalation. Prime Minister Trudeau insists the tariffs are unjust and violate trade agreements. Canadian diplomats are pushing for a new softwood lumber deal and using the USMCA review as leverage. They argue that stable, predictable lumber trade benefits both countries, keeping U.S. housing affordable and supporting Canadian jobs. But the Trump administration is holding firm, using tariffs as leverage. Canada prepares for a long dispute but keeps the door open for talks. The outcome will shape both economies for years to come. The stakes are high for families and industries on both sides of the border. The Trump administration justifies these tariffs on national security grounds, invoking Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. The claim, relying on foreign lumber, could threaten U.S. infrastructure in an emergency. Industry leaders and allies are skeptical. How does Canadian lumber threaten security? Critics say this stretches the law, using security as cover for economic disputes. There's no evidence of a supply threat. Canada is a close ally, not a rival. By framing tariffs as a security issue, the administration sidesteps Congress and international trade rules. Legal challenges are underway, questioning the president's authority to impose such tariffs. The debate isn't just about wood, it's about the limits of presidential power in trade. After all the politics and policy, one fact remains. Americans pay the price for these tariffs. Higher costs show up in new homes, renovations, and rent checks. The burden falls hardest on middle and lower-income families. The U.S. construction industry needs more lumber than it can produce. Canadian imports fill the gap. Disrupting this supply doesn't create self-sufficiency, it creates scarcity and higher prices. A few domestic producers may benefit, but most Americans lose out. The real cost of getting tough on trade is paid by families struggling to build their futures. The American dream is being taxed, one 2x4 at a time.